I'm putting together a quick video on querying the Microsoft Teams API through the Microsoft Graph, and I want to show how that works out. And I'm doing this in Visual Studio Code. I've got a little app running here. Let's go through. This is a sample app that I downloaded and customized to some degree to get working for me. The config file actually contains the client ID and secret, of course. The index.js this is where I've been playing with a lot of the logic, so that when the app actually loads, what it was doing was it was getting user data and displaying some basic stuff. I've got it now getting the Microsoft Teams of the current user. So there's a lot of stuff that's commented out that as I was working and playing here, but there's a function to actually call the show teams view and set the value of the teams HTML block to the all teams JSON request value. And the actual HBS, I guess, is a handlebars file. And the syntax for this, I just added a div called myTeams, and the syntax to iterate through in handlebars, it looks similar to what I remember from Angular and whatnot in an ng repeat, but you have an each block, and so for each entry, each team, grab the display name of that team. And so if I come out to my Graph Explorer here in the browser, and I'm doing this in my cat.sys demo tenant, the getting teams data is still in beta, but if I actually push the query out here, it shows me the JSON response, and there are two teams I'm a member of, corporate marketing and sales. Now if I refresh my actual locally hosted version of this, oh, it's not running. Let's do an npm start. Okay, let's try that again. I just bookmarked it so I could quickly refresh. First thing we have to do is connect to the graph. And so it's just automatically built into this app sample. I didn't do any of this authentication piece myself. But once I log in, I can actually see my teams. And so the overall process of what I did was I added another view called showteams.hbs, copied sendmail, and created one called showteams. This is all the HTML I really did aside from updating some of the text. The config file I had to put in the client ID and secret and update the scope from user.read to user.read.all. And then the index.js, we can actually clear some of this out. The red squigglies you're seeing are from the linter having an issue with formatting and stuff. Take that out. That was the default stuff. I'm going to leave that in there. This we should probably uncomment. That way when we just refresh the page it still works. Because right now if I just refresh, I'm authenticated, but it's kind of in an infinite loop right now. Because I said, yes, if the user is not authenticated, go to the login. But if the user is authenticated, this was commented out, so it's just kind of going to sit here and spin for a while. So we're going to stop that. So the way this is working now is originally, once we're authenticated, it would render the send mail view. I changed it to show teams, starting in my own view, isolated and everything. That's if I'm refreshing or trying to navigate back to the home page. The initial authentication takes you to the /token, which is where upon authentication we call the get user ms teams function to actually go out and query the teams. Once we get the teams back, there's a request object that's part of Express, and so you can just dynamically create properties on that. So I'm saying the response body value, user body value, we're going to just tack that onto the request as .allTeams, then render show teams, which comes down to this function and renders that view with these options. Set the value of the team's HTML thing to that request.all-teams. Now the actual call, there's a graph helper.js file where I copied one of the functions and just said get user ms teams. I had to change the URL endpoint. So beta me join teams. And that's what actually returns So I just use this URL, and when you run that query, you get your JSON response. So we just updated that request there. And so reviewing this one more time, once we're authenticated, we get the teams. Once we've got the teams, we render the show teams view, and in the show teams view, there's a render show teams function that calls the show teams view and sets the value of this thing. I don't know what to call it technically, but it's a teams object, and that's on the page just as teams here in the double braces. So kind of interesting. It's one step forward in getting a Microsoft Teams web part. We've kind of this kind of proves out the concept of yes, we can query the data and get it. Now I have to figure out, can we actually do all the functional requirements? I don't think that we can, because as you'll notice, while I can get the display name of a team, it doesn't tell me anything about the URL or anything like that. So I have to look at sorting, grouping, filtering, all the OData operations next. But pretty interesting stuff.